Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of The Missing Link in Your Healing. I'm recording this from my dear friend Bonnie's kitchen in Kenton-on-Sea in South Africa, so hence the background, because this is where I have the best Wi-Fi. So I'm going to bring to you in this episode another tool. A tool which will help you to bring the unconscious into conscious awareness. So this follows on very beautifully from Loretta's tool about feeling your feelings. If you cast your mind back to our previous episodes, and please, if you haven't listened to them, especially episode 4 and episode 7, they form a very, very important backdrop to these tools that we're putting out. So I don't want to keep on repeating them, but just to say the essence of what we've brought you so far is that the missing link in your physical healing could very well be unconscious emotions, limiting beliefs, coping mechanisms that are unknowingly or unknown to you running your show. And there is absolutely no doubt that that can lead, certainly in the long term anyway, to physical illness and some very serious physical illness, in my case, cancer. So Loretta and I are both really passionate about this. So she brought a tool on how to feel your feelings, because feeling our feelings has been shown by psychoneuroimmunology and other research, and Loretta, through working with her patients, that if we are not feeling our feelings, if we're suppressing them, then it's going to be very difficult for us to stay healthy or for us to help ourselves heal if we're sick. So I want to expand on that, or carry on from that whole theme of the unconscious and how it runs our show, and the feelings, to bring you a little bit more insight and information before I dive into a tool and a process. So yes, let's kick off by saying knowledge is the absolute first step. Without knowledge and awareness of what we don't know, there is no first step. There is no start to the path of this journey. However, knowledge on its own can never get us there. In fact, it can sometimes make our lives worse, in inverted commas. So for me, if I reflect back on my own journey, I had a huge amount of knowledge about the link between the body, the mind, the spirit, and my physical health. And I did many, many hours of research and workshops, as you've heard, on spiritual practice and self-help processes. And I knew so much that it's one of the reasons I can now put out this kind of podcast. But what I didn't know, and I didn't know it, is that having the knowledge on that 10% conscious level, remember we talked about the 10% is the conscious, and the unconscious is 90%. And that 90% is the program that runs our show until we change it. So on the 10% level, I knew, I had read all the books, done all of the workshops. I knew all the stuff. I was even doing a lot of the practices, many. But what I didn't know until I knew it, and that's why we're bringing this to you and we're pushing it home over and over, is that my unconscious program, the 90%, was running my show without me having any awareness of that at all. And ultimately, I believe that that was a big trigger for my cancer in 2017. It was the reason I had 2 autoimmune diseases before that. So the awareness of this, and then knowing how to work with the unconscious stuff, the hidden, the shadow, healing the past trauma is really where our healing lies, mentally, physically, and spiritually. So if someone's listening to this podcast for the first time, you might yet again ask a question you might have asked in previous episodes. Why are these people going on about the unconscious program running my show and my mind and emotions when I want to know how to heal myself physically? Well, the reason we're doing it is because you absolutely cannot separate them. And I think many, many people know that on an intellectual level, as I did. But what most people don't really know, or if they know it, they don't really know how to go about doing the daily work to change the program, is that program that's creating the limiting beliefs and the coping mechanisms that go with it is going to over time make you mentally, physically, and spiritually sick, and they all go together. If we're mentally not okay, and it doesn't mean we have to get diagnosed with borderline personality or some mental disorder. It does mean, however, that we might become stressed in our minds. We might experience anxiety or more anxiety. We might be triggered a lot. We might get very explosively angry, or like me, never get angry because all my anger was suppressed, and anger's been shown to be a big trigger, especially in cancer over the long term. So really what I'm trying to get home here is, now that we've given you the knowledge, and if you already have the knowledge, what's absolutely critical is to then start doing the daily work in inverted commas. I'm using Dr. Nicole Lapira's term, the work, because we do have to do the work. There is no quick fix. There is no microwave solution. Sorry, but that is the truth. And if we really want to heal mentally and physically and spiritually, we have to show up every single day of our lives to be incredibly self-aware and to do the daily practices and implement the tools that we're bringing to you or other people can bring. Well, I'm going to guide you to who those people can be besides us. Then we ain't going to change anything. And in fact, you're going to get worse, because like me, on the 10% level, you know what you know, and you're like, but why am I not happy? Why am I not peaceful? I'm doing all these practices. I've read all these books. I know all the knowledge. Why does my body keep on getting sick? Well, because there was a missing link there for me. And if I didn't know it, I think there's a lot of people that don't know it. And the missing link is this very thing I'm saying now and we're bringing to you. So if you want to help your body heal, we have to work on our minds and our emotions. Working on our mind and emotions means we have to dig into the unconscious, and we need to bring it into awareness, because once the unconscious becomes aware, or you become aware of it, then you can start working with it and changing it. We cannot change what we don't know. So that part of ourselves, that's the 90%, the conditioned self, that's based on our past trauma, if we've had, and if no trauma, on our socialization and conditioning. And by 7 years old, we are who we are, that program, that 90%, until we change it. And that is what is the ego. Okay, so the ego is based on that. So I don't want to overcomplicate any definitions or theories about the ego. This journey is absolutely not about annihilating your ego. It plays a very important role in every aspect of our lives, including our healing. But this journey is about integrating the ego into divine self, or into the unconditioned self, the self which is the essence of who we really are. So the ego, unfortunately, because of its role in our lives, it's there to keep us safe and to keep us loved. And unfortunately, because of our socialization and our conditioning and our response to that, it sometimes does it in all the wrong ways. and we don't even realize that. Like for me, because of my abandonment stuff in my younger years and the issues I experienced up to the age of 7, I had a pattern my whole life of being dissociated, of not just not feeling my feelings, but being dissociated. I had a pattern of people pleasing, like you can't believe. And everybody liked me because I could be anything you wanted me to be, to please you, to me, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? I overachieved. I've shared this before. I overeducated myself. I did loads and loads of research. Anyway, so just to say that my ego thought the way to keep me safe and loved was to make me into an unfeeling, on the surface, happy bunny who was so good at people pleasing that everybody liked me, because I was terrified of being rejected because of my abandonment issues. So that's just a very living example from me of how the ego does its job, but not in the right way until we're aware of our programming and we start reprogramming. So my journey has been very much informed by Dr. Nicole Lapiro, by Dr. Lisa Rankin, by mystical spiritual teachers like Richard Rohr, and by neuroscientists like Dr. Caroline Leaf. So everything that I bring from my personal journey, I've researched, but I've also worked with to help myself heal. Because Loretta and I only met a few years ago, and as we've said in our introductory episode, we just realized we're on the same page, but coming from different angles in a way, or in different ways. And so I didn't have a Loretta all those years ago. So everything I share with you today is somehow informed mostly by those people, but I don't know who, Carl Jung, I don't know who else I ended up studying and researching, but I've pulled it all together so that you and Loretta and I, all her experience and learning, so that you don't have to go and spend 5,000 hours doing research and going off to hundreds of workshops. So every single memory is stored in our brains. Every memory. Until we bring it into the conscious and we work with it if we need to. So what we do our whole lives is we practice our conditioned behavior until we become aware of it and change it. So we live a life where the ego makes all the choices for us, and it creates a whole lot of fear-based stories based on our past. Not our faults, not the ego's fault, it's just the way it works. It creates an illusion, this Dr. Lapiro says, that our opinions and beliefs are who we are. She also says because of this, we have, for example, low self-worth, like I did, or a drive to compete, that was me too, or deep scarcity. We are always waiting for the next crisis and we live in survival mode. I think most human beings do this, and some of us more than others. So the ego feeds on the vibration of fear and lives, therefore, through a paradigm of win and lose. And we are always going into competition. If you start observing your life and yourself, you might see this playing out. We take everybody's behavior personally, and we allow the opinions of others to dictate our choices. We feel consistent resentment often because the true parts of ourselves are repressed, and this leads to insecurity and low self-worth. And we have been into a lot of detail, Loretta and I, as to why this very thing makes you sick. So go back and listen to episode 4 and episode 9 and all the other episodes if you need to fill yourself in there. So let me get to the tool after nearly 15 minutes of background, but I hope it's been of value. So the very first thing we need to do in order to convert this knowledge into action and therefore true healing is we need to bring the unconscious into conscious awareness. We cannot change what we don't know, and the unconscious is going to run your life until you're aware of that and you start changing that. So most human beings, Loretta and I agree on this, and I was one of them, we think we're extremely self-aware. But I think you might find out, you might discover, if you carry on this journey with us, that you actually maybe not self-aware as you think you are, or not in the right way, or not enough. So, okay, so I am going to start now. We are both going to keep on giving you tools along the way, little bit by little bit, because the other thing is if you do too much of the stuff all at once, you try and change too fast, you try and fix things, as Loretta said before, it just trips you up and you can end up even going backwards. So very small triumphs are very important. Very small steps get us there, as long as we're heading in the right direction. So the neuroscientists, and I got this mostly from Dr. Caroline Leaf, they will tell you that emotional memories can be changed when they are brought into the conscious mind, because they then become vulnerable and thus susceptible to change. So one thing we really need to know from neuroscience, and you may know this, but you really need to embed it in yourself, is that we control our brains. Our brains don't control us. But we need to remember, know, and be very vigilant of this, that our thinking is what changes our brain. Our thinking changes our brain. Let that think in. So therefore, reprogramming the program we're talking about, the unconscious, becomes a journey of mental and emotional mastery and awareness. And that journey is critical for physical healing or keeping yourself well. So that's why we're bashing on about it. This, in fact, is a path to mental health and physical health. And in fact, it's the journey of becoming a divine embodied human being, which is who we really are. But in order to create this long-term change, we have to bring the unconscious into the conscious. So that means we need to meet our ego. We need to stop functioning in unconscious patterns and to let go of reactions triggered by the past. This means we start to question our ego. We question the stream of thoughts running through our head. With time, it takes time and daily practice, but over time, you will start becoming aware of your ego. You will know what situations to expect it to be triggered by or in. This expanded awareness allows us to see beyond the ego and choose a response more aligned with our authentic real selves. So once you start seeing the ego, not trying to annihilate it or being angry with it, but just seeing it, then it no longer will run your show. We want the ego to serve our divine self rather than running our lives. So this will work best. So the process is coming now if you challenge yourself beyond your comfort zone. So how do we start cultivating and practicing the self-awareness? So this is the tool, okay? You've got a journal, because last week Loretta said, get a journal and write. I'm going to explain to you just now from a neuroscience perspective why writing is so important and so powerful. Start taking a witness position. Bring awareness to every single aspect of yourself. Everything you say, everything you do, everything you feel. Start becoming the witness. I can tell you right now, if your journey is like mine, that ain't going to happen the first week. Not going to happen fast, because we are so used to being run by this perpetual thought process in our heads and the emotions that just play out consequent to that. And we really don't even know that's happening. So it takes time to be able to really watch your thoughts, and you'll be astounded at what happens in your head if you start doing that. How a thought starts somewhere, and 5 minutes later, it's somewhere else, 200 thoughts later. And then all the consequent emotions that come with that will play out. So you need to just start cultivating that awareness. Just start watching your mind, seeing your mind. What thoughts are going through your mind? How many? What feelings are they bringing? What is coming through your 5 senses? Start getting to a point where you don't let any thought go through your mind unchecked. Can you determine the attitude of your thoughts that are moving through your mind? Be aware how your body feels. Increase awareness of what you're allowing into your mind and how your body feels. Become aware of what you're thinking. What are your triggers and what are your patterns and coping mechanisms? So the neuroscientists and psychologists suggest doing this practice for at least 2 weeks and to write everything down. So it might be helpful to repeat an affirmation as suggested by Nicole Ep4, because the ego hates change. The ego can't stand change, and it has an absolute hissy fit, and it's going to try and stop this process and sabotage you because it doesn't feel safe. So this is the affirmation she suggests. I'm safe, and I choose a new way to experience myself separate from my ego. Say that every single day. Give your ego a name. Make friends with it. This is a very powerful step in seeing the ego as, well, it's not separate from us, but seeing the ego as something that can run our lives rather than being integrated with our real self. So, yeah, see what name comes up intuitively for you, for your ego. The best way to meet your ego and the friend list is when it's triggered. So set an intention to observe your ego, especially in conversation. Just choose one conversation a day. Notice everything that you say after the word I. How often do I speak about myself? What was an adjective I used to describe myself? Did anything in the conversation bring an uncomfortable emotional reaction? So write this all down. All parts of the brain are involved in writing. It's like putting your brain on paper. And how you write, according to Dr. Caroline Leaf, is very important. There are ways of writing that are far more effective than others. So don't write in straight lines. Be playful. Use color, use texture. Pour out your thoughts and observations. Be random with it. Draw. Make it skew or upside down. It doesn't have to be linear, and it's better if it's not. So this is a way of seeing your thoughts and patterns on paper and evaluating the way you think and what you're thinking about. Keep a thought journal and just pour these thoughts and feelings and observations out. We are going to take all these tools and processes further, but for now, we're going to leave it at that. It sounds like it doesn't sound like big work, but it's very, very critical, and it ties in very much with the feeling your feelings that Loretta did. They're two pieces of the same puzzle. So what we're trying to do here is to stop ourselves functioning in patterns that we haven't consciously chosen. This work is a new opportunity for us to choose for ourselves and to let go of the blockages in us. So it does take repetitive daily practice throughout the day, not just a morning practice. I mean, that's important, but throughout the day. It takes some courage, some commitment, some tenacity, a lot actually, and it takes work in inverted commas. And don't be impatient with yourself, because it can take time, and be so compassionate with yourself. It's critical. Please don't judge yourself, be angry with yourself, because when you start seeing what you're thinking and what you're feeling and how you triggered, and you start writing this down, you're going to go, oh my goodness, that's me. And it's not always so nice. But self-compassion, to go slowly, because we cannot change what we don't see. So even if it isn't so lekker, it's all fine. It's part of you. And we're showing you and leading you how to work with it and integrate it. So much love.